Hi, everybody, and welcome to our virtual conference entitled Mission Possible. And obviously, this is going to be kind of a play on our favorite movies. But first of all, I'm Dr. Jeremy Pettis. I'm an endocrinologist at University of California, San Diego. Been living with type 1 diabetes since I was 15. Joined, as always, by my good friend and colleague,
Dr. Steve Edelman.
Same introduction, type 1 since he was 15, founded TCOYD over 25 years ago. So again, this virtual conference is playing on some of our favorite movies. You know, we did some James Bond things, and we thought, what better way to start the conference than talking about what a transformative year it's been in diabetes. So Transformers, right? We all love Transformers.
Transformers?
Yeah?
I got something for you. Hold on.
Oh, great. This ought to be good. Okay. All right. Steve, that's not even close to the right movie. That's clearly Iron Man. And we're talking about Transformers here. You know, like Optimus Prime and stuff? Yeah. Okay. See you, buddy. So as I was saying, you know, we're talking about a transformative year in diabetes. Thanks for trying, though. That was a nice little, there was a lot of things going on over there. It was kind of impressive to watch. People couldn't see what was happening.
Thank you for the thanks.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
So we're going to start with type 1 diabetes, which is obviously near and dear to our hearts. And we're going to talk about 3 broad categories of things that have been going on in the world of type 1 diabetes. The first one we're going to lump into kind of what we would call cure-based therapies, immunotherapies, kind of broad topics. The second one, which we'll get to, is other non-insulin medications that people can take, you know, potentially down the road. And then the final one is going to be technology, continuous glucose monitors, insulin pumps, et cetera.
And a lot has happened in the last year.
Yeah.
And I think it's really smart that we're going to pick 3 main topics and give us a chance to discuss it in a little more detail.
Yeah. And so we kind of, I don't think we've ever really started with these cure-based approaches because, to be honest, they've been a little bit of a letdown. I mean, when I was diagnosed in '94, I was told that there'd be a cure for type 1 diabetes in 10 to 15 years. And when you were diagnosed in 1926...
1970.
Yeah. How long did they tell you there would be a cure?
10 to 15 years.
Yeah, exactly. So
what would you say to someone today?
I'd say about 10 to 15 years. So
But I think you mean it.
I mean it this time. So it's always been just kind of over the horizon. That's the point. But it really is an exciting time for this area. So let's start with something we've talked about a lot kind of at TCOYD, is that we now have our first approved medication ever for the prevention, if you will, of type 1 diabetes. It's a medication called teplizumab, or Tzield is the trade name.
Yeah, the marketing name.
You want to tell us a little bit about it? Or?
Well, you know, it's ready for this? You know this. Anti-CD3 monoclonal antibody. A lot of drugs these days are monoclonal antibodies, but it's a medication that blocks these, quote unquote, I've heard you say, killer T cells that are the cells that destroy the beta cells, the insulin-producing beta cells. And there's a lot we don't know about the cause of type 1, but we do know the autoimmune system goes awry. And for some reason, when we were both 15, our bodies started to produce these killer T cells that attacked our beta cells, and we became dependent on insulin the rest of our lives.
Yeah. So, and we both got type 1 when we were 15, but this process was probably going on when we were 12, 10. We don't know, but it's happening kind of silently. So this medication now is approved for people that have 2 of these antibodies present in their blood, but they haven't developed kind of type 1 diabetes, if you will, yet. So what this kind of call to action is that it's a time to get people screened to see if they're at risk for type 1 diabetes. So if you're listening, you have type 1, it's too late for us.
Well, you can listen to the second part of our talk.
Yeah. So you can get your relatives screened, your children, your brothers, your sisters, even your parents. The best thing to do is just go to type1tested.com, and Eric can put that on the screen to figure out ways to do this. And if you have 2 of these antibodies positive, you might be eligible for this drug. It's a 14-day IV course. You get it kind of like 30 minutes a day for 14 days. And it's been proven in clinical trials to delay the onset by about 2 to 3 years, which is a big deal.
Yeah, the average delay.
Right.
Some people who were in the studies haven't even got type 1 yet. Others got it sooner. And you know what? A lot of people at the FDA, they really I say not that knowledgeable about living with type 1, and they might say, what is 3 years? But look at the developments we've seen in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
It's getting ready for the diagnosis, so you don't have to crash and burn and go into ketoacidosis. It's just so much better to know that you might be at risk, and when the symptoms start coming on for the true diagnosis of type 1, you're ready, and you never even have to be hospitalized.
Yeah. And what do you want to say to those people that say, is 3 years a big deal?
I really can't.
He usually does a hand gesture. That's what I was kind of getting. There it is. All right. So that's to delay the onset of type 1 diabetes. Now, get this. So we're filming this obviously today. Just 2 or 3 days ago now, they published results of the same medication, teplizumab or Tzield, that they're now looking at people who are newly diagnosed for type 1. So it's approved to delay the onset, but what about people that have just been diagnosed with it? There's now new data, again, a couple days old, showing that if somebody's newly diagnosed with type 1, you give them the same therapy, it can help preserve the insulin production that they still have. So when type 1s are diagnosed, they still have 10 to 20% of their beta cells left. And trust me, those are worth saving. If you make any insulin, it's been shown you have less complications of diabetes, you have less hypoglycemia. So it's not approved yet for people newly diagnosed, but I would predict in the next 6 to 12 months, it will be. So it'll be something that every single person, when they're diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in the hospital, will probably be offered this new therapy to help them, hold on to their insulin production.
Yeah, that well said, Jeremy. And just one word on the screening. The screening is super important because most people have no symptoms in that stage. And believe it or not, you said you can have your parents. Even if your parents aren't really your parents, they're at risk for getting type 1 as well. But we are screening now first and second degree relatives of people with type 1 because they have a higher rate than the general population. So just like Jeremy and I, they say that 80% of the people that come down with type 1 do not have a family history.
Yeah,
so
I don't have a family history. Steve doesn't. I always just thought I was the lucky one, but that's just kind of the way it goes.
You know what? After getting to know you and starting TCOYD 25 years ago, you said 15 on the intro.
Oh, I did?
I'll let it go.
Sorry.
That, it's been something that's really helped our careers and made us super happy. And we were laughing the other day that if they cure type 1, we won't know what to do.
Yeah. When Steve founded TCOYD 7 months ago. All right. So there's a lot going on with this medication. And I mentioned, so hopefully it'll be approved for people newly diagnosed. And the thinking in the community is that this will just build. It'll be this medication plus another one, maybe plus other things. And so that hopefully we can help, combat the autoimmune attack. All right, so some other things we're gonna go through a little bit quicker. People just kind of generally heard about stem cells. What's the deal with stem cells? I want some of those stem cells to cure me. And here's the thing. We now have the ability to make stem cells that can become beta cells. So we don't have to worry about the supply anymore. It used to be when we wanted to do transplants of beta cells, you would have to get them from people that died in car accidents and
or
donated
human
their
fetuses. And it was not politically correct to bring it up because there's religious issues. So now we can just produce them ourselves synthetically.
Right, so we can make enough beta cells for everybody in the world with diabetes, literally. Now, the issue still is that when you infuse these into people, and this is how they're doing these in clinical trials, a company called Vertex, you might have heard some of their data, they take these cells, they actually put them into a blood vessel. It's kind of a procedure, like if you're having a heart catheterization, it's not that big of a procedure, it's not a surgery. These cells go, they start living in the liver and producing insulin. And they've done, a handful of patients now, and they've shown, especially in their first patient, which hit like literally in the New York Times, that came off insulin, was essentially cured with diabetes. The bad news, or the thing that we still have to figure out, is that people have to take immunosuppression. So if you get an infusion of cells from somebody else, your body will naturally reject those. So these people in these trials are always taking immunosuppression, which is okay, but these are not, minor things. They can cause, you can be more prone to infections, potentially cancers down the line. So this field is definitely moving forward. The stem cells has, again, kind of tackled the supply issue, but now it's how do we give them to everybody and ideally not need, immunosuppression.
Yeah, and Vertex, they're working hard on getting away from the need for immunosuppressants. The current study now that people can get involved with are those that have severe hypoglycemia unawareness. Like I'd be talking to you and then like, boom, no symptoms or very little symptoms. And why don't you mention the CRISPR technology?
Yeah. So yeah, there's first of all, the company's called Vertex. You can go to their website. They have information on the different studies that they're doing. They're doing other ways of modifying these cells to try to make them kind of invisible to the immune system, so you wouldn't need immunosuppression. They're also looking at putting these cells in certain devices and implanting them under under your skin, so that like they can protect the cells from the immune system, so you wouldn't need immunosuppression. So a lot going on in this area, and it's actually really, really exciting. And the final category is this one that honestly I've been newly exposed to. This idea of just kind of gene therapy for type 1 diabetes. And there's a company called Kriya, Kriya, that's working on, get this, taking a virus and putting an insulin gene in the virus and then injecting this virus
through the genes.
Yeah, through the genes into people's, well, they haven't done it in people's yet. They've done it in mice and dogs and monkeys, injecting it into their muscles to basically, once the virus gets in the muscle, it allows the muscles to start using this insulin gene to produce insulin. So it's a way of almost turning your muscles into beta cells, which is just wild. It's science fiction.
And it auto-regulates and everything?
It does auto-regulate to some degree, and it's basically essentially cured mice, dogs. Now they've done this for like 7 years now in dogs, and even exercise them, and they don't go hypoglycemic. And now some really good, data potentially in monkeys. So what another kind of exciting, wild area of kind of cure-based approaches. So again, we're going to move on to the next topic, but we could spend a lot of time here, which is something that we've not ignored previously, but like just we don't bring it front and center.
Yeah, all the stuff that Vertex is doing and gene therapy. That's for people like us who are way past the diagnosis.
Yeah, I'm tired of delaying type 1 diabetes. I already have it. What about me? And honestly, when I've heard some of these things, it's like you said, what would I do if there was a cure? First of all, I'd be stoked as a person living with diabetes. As somebody who's an endocrinologist, to be like, well, Steve and I got to take our dog and pony show on the road.
Starbucks.
Yeah.
We'll work at Starbucks.
All right. So our second broad category, what we're going to call kind of non-insulin medications. So God bless insulin. It's literally life-saving. We will always need it as people with type 1 diabetes. But are there other medications we can use in addition to insulin to help us control our blood sugars, help out with our weight, hearts, kidneys, things like that? And it's no major news that there's so much going on in type 2 diabetes. You literally can't turn on the TV and hear about Ozempic and this drug's called Mounjaro that
Trulicity.
Yeah. And all those stars are taking. Elon Musk and the Kardashians, everybody are on these medications. And why are people so excited about these?
Well, you know what? These drugs originally for type 2 that they thought that they were going to help primarily for lowering glucose. Then they did these big, huge cardiovascular studies. They showed that it reduced heart attacks and strokes, and most recently even reduced the progression of kidney disease. But the big excitement for a lot of people is weight loss. And weight loss does a lot of good things for people that are overweight. And you published, I was a second author, a third author, about the degree of obesity in type 1s as we get older.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, 2 out of 3 type 1s are either overweight or obese now. So this is a problem for all of us. So these drugs, they really do wonders, and they're not approved for type 1s. And the only reason is that basically they haven't done the studies, so it means that insurance companies won't pay for them. We actually can prescribe them to type 1s all day long, but if they're not covered by insurance, it's like you just can't get it. So we really need companies to kind of, study these in type 1s. And they have done some studies. And guess what? It works in type 1s.
Yeah.
People's blood sugars are better. They lose weight, all the same things that we see in type 2s. Now, there is one company that I've been working with, and we're going to start clinical trials soon, called Carmot, C-A-R-M-O-T, that's actually developed a GLP-1 GIP combo drug, exactly like Mounjaro. But it's a once-a-day injection, and they're studying it exclusively in type 1s. So I'm actually really excited that this could be the first, in a couple years from now, approved drug for type 1s that does all these things, because I'm tired of missing out.
He's always so jealous, and so am I.
Yeah.
I don't have to whine and cry about it because he makes up for both of us. But Jeremy mentioned the GLP-1 plus another drug called GIP. It's not a drug, it's a natural hormone. And when you put these two together, like Lilly did for Mounjaro, they got greater weight loss, greater A1C reduction. And why not? And there's no reason to believe that these drugs will not have the same cardiovascular benefits.
Yeah. And like literally, you know, when I prescribe these medications for my type 2 patients, another issue is they can't get it right now. I mean, there's shortages of these drugs because they can't keep up with production because of all the people that are trying to use it for weight loss or diabetes. Like these are just nothing short of just game-changing medications. They really are.
They're changing people's lives.
Yeah. So stay tuned for that category because I think there's going to be a lot happening in kind of non-insulin medications. I think hopefully this Carmot drug will get approved, maybe some others. So I see a day that if you have, you know, type 1 like us for a while, that it's insulin plus, you know, something to help out.
I'll just say one last thing, Jeremy. You know, you can get these GLP-1 drugs officially if your BMI is over 27. Just go online and put your weight and height in. It'll tell you what your BMI is. And you have risk factors. So everyone's got, you know, family history of heart disease or diabetes, and if you don't, just make it up. And I know a lot of patients of mine have gotten it.
It's a good point. So what Steve is saying is that they're not approved for type 1 diabetes, but they are approved for obesity. So if you do have issues with weight, which a lot of us do, then you can kind of ask your doctor, hey, I'm not trying to use this for my type 1 diabetes. I want to use it for weight loss. A lot of times there's weight loss programs you might have to go through to qualify for it, but going through those hoops can be really worth it. So that is kind of a loophole, if you will, to get, you know, some of these drugs now. All right, so the last category, technology. Two kind of main things that have happened here. First of all, we had the approval of the iLet, which is a pump from Beta Bionics. You know, I did the initial studies with this new pump at UCSD and other sites. And really it's different in that when you start it, you enter your weight, it starts to supposedly kind of learn what you need for your basal rate. And what the coolest feature about it is that when you eat, you don't enter carbs, you just say, I'm eating a typical amount of carbs for this meal, or a little bit more or a little bit less. So it kind of is more of how we all think about food. You know, I'm eating my usual breakfast, or you know what, I'm going for it a little bit more today or a little bit less. And it starts to learn, again, what you mean by that for that given time of day, and will give you kind of an automatic bolus. And the clinical trials, and when we worked with it, it did best in people that were not on pumps, people that were on injections. They went on the system, they were happy to kind of hand over control. For people that were already on a Tandem or an Omnipod, they found it a little bit more difficult, where they like to kind of tinker with it a little bit more. So it's just something to be, you know, aware of as a new artificial pancreas system, if you will, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, if you think about it, it's the closest thing to a true artificial, not a hybrid. It is a hybrid because you still have to enter the size of your meal, but you also, you know, are hands off. You don't do any corrections. So if you're high after eating, you got to be patient. And I think some patients had a hard time with that. Others just went on with their daily activity, and eventually they came down. And, you know, I have a couple patients on it, and most of them really like it. And I think you're right, Jeremy. It depends where you're coming from. And these algorithms will become more aggressive, so you won't have to be that patient. But a lot of people are saying for people that have a crazy busy life, that haven't been that much into their diabetes, it's awesome.
Yeah, so something to be aware of that literally just hit the market the last couple months. So,
well, tell them what's next. The dual hormone.
Yeah, so right now that's with insulin only. I mean, it's an insulin pump just like all the others. But the idea with this system always was to have insulin with glucagon. So insulin to bring your blood sugars down, glucagon to raise it, kind of a dual chamber pump. And they're doing studies now to test the kind of dual configuration. The FDA wanted them to start with insulin only. They did that. The results were positive. It's on the market now. And the plan is to add glucagon, which people are, you know, excited about, that the hope is it'll give you better control, but even less hypoglycemia.
Yep, and kudos to Ed Damiano, who had this idea of the bionic pancreas. And We should go back to our original video.
Yeah, exactly. We predicted this. But Steve, we got a minute left, literally. I don't know much about this, but tell us about the Mobi.
Yeah, the Mobi is a new pump by Tandem. In a nutshell, it's much smaller. It holds 200 units, not 300 like the Control IQ. And it's a lot of people use less than they need for the 300. And you could get a really nice patch that you can put it right on your body, kind of like a patch pump. Still has an infusion line, but it's much shorter. It's got all the hybrid closed loop technology that the Control IQ has. And it's got some really nice features where you can give your bolus right through the pump.
Or it's controlled by your phone too, right?
Yep. You control your phone too. So it's basically another form factor. If you like a smaller, more compact pump that you can put under your clothes and not have the long tubing, but you can have the long tubing with this as well. It's your choice. Depends how you want to wear it.
And is it available when?
It's approved and it should be available in the next few months. They're just ramping up production.
All right, well that is our kind of rapid fire look through, type 1 diabetes. And there's a lot that we left on the table, things that we haven't covered. But go to our video vault, tcoyd.org, click watch, look at all of our videos. Trust me, we've covered it somewhere else. This was just highlights, and there's a lot of highlights.
Yep.
So anyways, hope you enjoy the rest of our program, and we'll talk to you soon.